This is a class entitled Buddha Mind Beyond Death. And the reason I felt it was important to teach this subject is because there is a very precious lineage of Vajrayana yogic practitioners who have a tradition and a history of being able to maintain a meditative state during the dying process and beyond. And so I really wanted to share this information with people who may not be aware of it, because the one thing that we all know, the one certainty in our life, once we're born, we're going to die. And it's also a very uncertain time as to when that's going to happen. We don't know if I'm going to drop dead during this talk right now. That would be a little dramatic, but could happen. We don't know. Or anything. We really don't know when our time of death is coming. It's a big uncertainty. And in our culture, we don't have a lot of information about what the dying process is like, and we certainly don't have a lot of information about how we can go through it with a kind of grace and a positiveness and even an optimism, which is what this presentation is about. So first of all, I'm kind of setting this up as if it's a Vajrayana Buddhist practice, which means it needs to be good and auspicious at the beginning, and then also at the middle, and then at the end. And the way to make it auspicious in the beginning is to set the intention. So the intention that I'm setting here is, and you can all set your intentions as well for listening to the presentation. My intention is that everybody here who I can see, and also any unseen beings who might be connecting and listening, whoever is connected with what we're doing right here, will benefit from the information that I'm presenting, from the practices that we do. I pray that all these beings benefit and ultimately attain enlightenment and are free from all of their suffering that they may be experiencing right now in terms of temporary sufferings, temporary setbacks, but ultimately I also pray that all those beings attain enlightenment as soon as possible. This lineage that I'm discussing is based on Guru Padmasambhava, who was considered to be the second Buddha. He was a yogi from the area of India who brought Buddhism to Tibet, and particularly this form of Tantric Buddhism. So I'm going to, later in the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Vajraguru mantra, but right now I'm just going to sing it 3 times. You can join me if you know it, just to pray to Guru Rinpoche and ask for his blessings. Om Ahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Om. Om Ahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Om. Om Ahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Om. I chose the full moon for this presentation because full moon is very much connected with what we call Guru Yoga, which is merging our mind with the Guru, and so it's a great time to receive the Guru's blessings. So I'm just going to read a short poetic description of Guru Rinpoche. Naturally arising Padma, Padma means lotus, this is what I am called, the emanation of Buddha Amitabha's wisdom mind, the light of the Buddha of compassion's enlightened speech, the brother to all Dakinis, the king of warriors, the master of the Buddha's actions, past, present, and future, the incomparable, great, excellent one, In manifest forms I appear, endowed with powerful compassion, taming each according to their needs in a great wave of enlightened action, and fulfilling the hopes of sentient beings just as they desire. So, as I mentioned, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, was considered the second Buddha, brought Buddhism to Tibet, and he's also one of the yogis, the two main yogis who attained what is called the rainbow body of great transference. In terms of attainments beyond death, there are different levels, and we'll be looking at people who've attained and achieved things in our generation, and even Westerners who've meditated through the death process in recent days and months. But Guru Padmasambhava attained a very high level of this, which is called rainbow body of great transference, where he still exists in a body of light, and he manifests to other beings in this body of light kind of frequently, as we'll see soon. One of his closest students was his consort, his Tibetan consort named Yeshe Tsogyal, and she was considered to be an emanation of Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. And she was responsible for hiding a lot of what are called the termas, which are the treasures. And we're going to be talking at the beginning of this workshop about the tertans, the treasure revealers, because they are a very clear example of beings that have transcended the death process and continue to reincarnate again and again and do their work. And so what happened was Guru Padmasambhava, kind of anticipating the difficult times that we are in now, and even in the last 800 years or more, Guru Padmasambhava came to Tibet in the 8th century, so it's been a while. But he concealed different kinds of treasures that would be revealed at later times by emanations of his 25 disciples. So that's kind of a tanka, a picture of Guru Padmasambhava with Yeshe Tsogyal in Yabyum, in union. Those kinds of images in the Vajrayana aren't specifically about physical sex, but they're more about the union of our own nature, internal nature of male and female, that kind of thing. But anyway, these different disciples of Padmasambhava all continue to reincarnate as treasure revealers and bring different treasures out. And these treasures, some of them are texts, some of them are statues. I'm going to be showing you a statue that was actually pulled out of a rock. They're kind of remarkable kinds of stories about how the treasure revealers receive instructions directly from Padmasambhava and then go and find these different things that have been concealed in all over Tibet and Nepal, and then this has been happening now for hundreds of years. I have a book here that I'm going to be quoting from called The 100 Tertans, written by Jamgon Kongtrul, who's a very famous Lama, and he compiled histories of all of them. And this is Padmasambhava's words about it. He said, "I have placed instructions on the most profound quintessence throughout all this land, filling it out of my great love for degenerate beings, because Tibetans are very fond of novelty. I have prayed that disciples with karma find them. In the future, there will appear sophists fond of jargon. They will cause dissension among meditators. They will praise themselves and dispute the termas, which are the treasures. Nevertheless, most practitioners in degenerate times will be guided by these termas, which are profound, complete, uncorrupted, and extensive. Each single instruction will definitely free beings. Therefore, those with awakened karma, receptivity, and previous training who remember death, practice these termas. My followers, you will travel on the path to freedom in one life. All those in degenerate times who are receptive and devoted to terma will be those who have now seen Guru Rinpoche's face and made aspirations. You all have the karma. Rejoice. This woman's words are more valuable than gold. The reason it says this woman's words is this was written by Yeshe Tsogyal. And this actually came out of a terma. But in any case, this is what the terma tradition is, of these treasures that were buried by Guru Rinpoche, Yeshe Tsogyal, back in those days, 8th century, and continue to be revealed to this day. So I'm going to talk about a few interesting treasure revealers, and especially ones that are directly connected with my own lineage and also the lineage, in the Death Doula program. So this was a rather recent treasure revealer, Trushuk Lingpa. Trushuk means crazy wisdom in Tibetan, and he lived from 1916 to 1962. This is an incredible book. If you ever want to read a really, really interesting story. Because things don't always go so well for these tertons. They receive prophecies and they try to do what they're supposed to do, but things don't always go right. One of the things that I really remember about this book, when I read it, is that he cured a whole village of am I forgetting the word? The skin thing where you rot away. Leprosy. He cured a whole village of lepers. And again, he did it not in a medicinal way, but he received instructions that it was being caused because the nagas, or the serpent spirits in the water, were angry at the people for things that they had done. And so he did a lot of ceremonies, and it was very very kind of colorful and dramatic how it all happened. But anyway, this whole village became his devoted followers because they were lepers. They had been shunned by the rest of society, and he was actually able to cure it by doing this, spiritual sort of shamanic work with the local entities. And so they got cured, and then later he started receiving instructions that he was supposed to open up a hidden land. And we're going to be talking more about hidden lands later. Guru Rinpoche not only hid different kinds of treasures in the forms of statues and things, but he also hid whole lands that could only be opened up by treasure revealers. And so he tried to open up a hidden land, again, in a very dramatic way, and many people, hundreds of people, were following him. And basically, if you can imagine, giving up everything they had, selling all their possessions, selling their house to go follow him to this hidden land. This was right after, I believe, the exodus from Tibet. And so everybody, was already kind of scattered in different directions. But anyway, he went on this mission and had a bunch of people with him, and didn't end up working out too well. But anyway, he was a very interesting terton, and was able to do remarkable things like cure people of leprosy and things like that. One of his daughters is one of my teachers. Her name is Sangyum Kamala. Kamala, of course, means lotus. The reason she is standing on a ladder there is she's building an absolutely enormous stupa in India. I actually founded a nonprofit for her called Dakini Land Foundation a number of years ago, and anyway, she's somebody I have a connection to, and it's interesting. I read that book that I was just mentioning, not knowing that was her father. I knew her father was a terton, but it wasn't until the end of the book that I put two and two together and realized, oh my goodness, this was her father I've been reading about, and she was the little girl in the story. So anyway, she's now in her 70s. She's still very vibrant and active, interesting person. She comes to the U.S. In fact, I brought her to Mount Shasta a number of years ago. And she went to Tara's Refuge, if you guys know Patty Cashman and Tara's Refuge. Anyway, I brought her to Tara's Refuge, and we did Naga practice, serpent practice up at the lake near here and things like that. So she's involved, very involved with Dharma still. So another Terton that I want to introduce you to is Chogyur Lingpa, who was born in 1800. And he was an incarnation, the final incarnation of the son, the prince of the king who brought Padmasambhava to Tibet. So the king and his children were some of the main disciples. So this was the prince Murub Senpo, the second son of the king Trison Detsen. And he was considered to be the last in the lineage of the 100 major Tertons, regarded as the Terton or the treasure revealer for our times, with his teachings particularly potent for our day and age. In fact, we're going to do a practice later from his treasures. So his practices are short, easy to understand. He was a very prolific treasure revealer. His treasures consist of more than 40 volumes of Tibetan books. And he was the holder of many different kinds. As I said, there are a lot of different kinds of treasures. There's the oral lineage, the actual treasures, rediscovered treasures, pure vision treasures, where it comes in a vision, etc. So, so he was a very powerful one. And when he passed away, Jamyang Khenzi Wangpo, who I'm going to be talking about later too, another treasure revealer, and they were very close, had a vision in which he saw that Chogyur Lingpa had become the Bodhisattva Pema Nyingpo, which means lotus essence, in his own newly created Pure Land, which was called the lotus-covered realm. So basically, after he left this world, he was the last of the 100 Tertons of that cycle, and he created his own Pure Land as well.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
This has the handprints and footprints.
Yes.
On them. Are those of the actual person?
Yes, those are the hand and footprints of the actual person. I have these in my shrine in my room, by the way. You can get them. But yeah, they're very powerful tankas because they have the real handprints and footprints. Here's another lineage. I'm just using, although it's true that men kind of dominate, the male gender kind of dominates Tibetan Buddhism in a lot of ways, but you're going to see that I'm talking about a lot of women here, just because I'm interested in sort of bringing up the feminine side of things. So Vajravarahi, Vajra means diamond, and Varaha is sow or pig. So it's basically the diamond sow is what it means. This is what she looks like on the left. This is what she looks like in the Vedic tradition. I actually found this statue in the British Museum, where it had been taken out of India. But she's basically a sow-faced female deity. And over here, when she gets into the Tibetan side of things, she kind of has a regular Dakini women's face, but she has a little pig's head poking out of her head. So that's still the connection. But anyway, she's a very important deity. And she reincarnated, she's been reincarnating in a lineage in Tibet as well. So the first reincarnation was called Choki Droma, and that's a tanka of her on the left. On the right is the current one, who's actually works for the Communist Party in China. So, but she's still, there are now 12 of them. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the original one, because you'll hear this story a lot, especially this kind of story, especially among the women reincarnations or treasure revealers. So she was the princess in a court, And she was recognized by the court astrologer as a divine incarnation of some sort, but they didn't specify. At the age of 6, she conceived the wish to renounce the world, but was not permitted to go ahead with it, as she was to be married to one of the princes of the neighboring principalities. And then she was married and antagonized and subdued the Bonpo priests of the royal household by practicing the rituals and self-empowerments of Vajravarahi. That was the deity that I had mentioned earlier. So she was just spontaneously doing this stuff. Got pregnant, had a girl, and then she really wanted to take religious vows. So she eventually managed to get away from her marriage. She requested both her father's and her husband's family's permission to take monastic ordination. Eventually she resorted to extreme means, tearing her hair and hurting herself, standing before her shocked family, bloody, disheveled, and in a very agitated state. She finally obtained the desired permission to leave worldly life behind. And so she went through a lot, trying to get out of the worldly stuff, which frequently happens to these women. They're supposed to get married off, and instead they want to follow the religious life. So she did finally, after that is when she was originally recognized as an emanation of Vajravarahi. And so this lineage has continued. So she has continued to reincarnate. And basically, every time she passes out of a body, she goes into another body and becomes Vajravarahi. Vajravarahi continues to manifest. So there's a really interesting book that's written about her different lives and all of this stuff. So she wasn't a treasure revealer, but she is a manifestation of a goddess, an important goddess. Okay, so here's another Jamyam Khyentse Wangpo, who was very close with Chogyur Lingpa, and they were living around the same time. And in fact, one of the interesting things about these two is that they would discover treasures and find the same treasures in different places, but they would be like word for word exactly the same. This happened a number of times. It's really interesting. But they were very, very close. And he, Jamyam Khyentse Wangpo, lived from 1820 to 1892. He was considered to be the seal of all the tertons. He was actually the guru of the person who wrote this book, 100 Tertons. He just keeps referring to him as, my Lama and all of that. So he was, he could see all the terma hidden throughout Tibet and other countries. He was the only master in Tibetan history to not only receive but also transmit the 7 transmissions, that are canonical teachings, treasures taken from the earth, reconcealed treasures, in other words, treasures that were put back, mind treasures, recollections, pure visions, and oral transmissions received in visions. So he was transmitting all these different kinds of treasures. And you can see, again, this is a very powerful image with his hands and feet, actual prints. His next incarnation that he went into was named Jamyam Khyentse Choki Lodro, who lived from 1893 to 1959. So we have a picture of him, an actual photo, and he was a monk most of his life, but as he was getting older, he was having health problems, and he was really pressured and advised to take a consort to lengthen his life, which is something that is understanding in the Tibetan tradition. So he did, and she ended up being a remarkable woman, and he lived longer. He's got a very interesting biography as well that's out if you ever want to read about him. Then we come to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. These are the Khyentse incarnations. Now, Khyentse means wisdom, love. Khen means wisdom, Se means love. So this sort of combination, you could call it loving wisdom or something like that. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was beloved He was a teacher of the Dalai Lama. I'll be showing you a picture of him with the Dalai, giving teachings to the Dalai Lama, just totally amazing Lama. And this right in the Lama in his lap is a very important Lama for me and a very important Lama in our time. He actually wrote the textbook that we're using for the Death Doula program. And he's my inspiration for doing this, actually, and also gave the blessing for doing this interfaith Death Doula program using his book. So he was born in 1961, and I have a lot of really funny and interesting pictures of him because he likes to kind of play, one would say, in a lot of different ways. He's a very well-known Lama. He travels all over the world. He's in Australia right now, doing lots and lots of prayers for the fires and for the Wuhan epidemic and all of that. So here he is. This is Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche, and this Lama is the reincarnation of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. He was, when in the previous slide where you saw he was in the lap of that other Lama, Dilgo Khyentse. Now this is the reincarnation of that Lama. So if you can just imagine, a few decades ago, he was being nurtured and raised by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. I'm sure he was like a father to him because they were both Khyentse incarnations. But Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was several decades older, and now he's nurturing Dilgo Khyentse's incarnation, who's now in his 20s. So the remarkable continuity and strength of and bonding between these people through multiple lifetimes. Here's a bunch of lamas who are all students of the older Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Besides Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche, who's lying down there, there's the picture that this Lama is holding to his heart is another incarnation of the Khyentses. So it's not like there's like a one-to-one correspondence necessarily. And in fact, another Terten I'm going to tell you about actually reincarnated before he died. So, they're a little bit beyond space and time in all of this in terms of how they do this. Yeah, I'm showing you all my favorite pictures, as you can see. This was fairly recent, last 6 months or so. You can see how joyful they all are to be together. This is the one who was missing in the other picture, Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche with Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche. So they're both the Khyentse incarnations. They're very, very close, although Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche is the more out in the world one. But we're just doing a great accomplishment ceremony on Tara in Australia together. So I was looking at all the pictures of them praying together and practicing together in Australia in the last few days and feeling very joyful. This is Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche when he was a little boy. You can kind of see it already. So he recently came out of a 6-month retreat after, he's somebody who's very brave and using social media and all kinds of things, and sometimes he gets himself into a little bit of trouble because I think people misunderstand him or they don't really listen to what he has to say. But after he came out of retreat, he was really on fire, and he was really changing a lot of vocabulary about meditation and compassion, all the words we use. He wasn't happy with how we're using those words. So authentic presence is his translation for Tathagata, the word Tathagata. In the scriptures, Buddha refers to himself as the Tathagata. And it has different kinds of translations, but he feels like authentic presence is what makes the most sense in English. So he said, I've recently realized that to be a Buddhist does not necessarily mean that you have to have some sort of homework. What you need is to admire the spirit or principle of Tathagata. Once you have that, once you become a fan of Tathagata, once you admire the Tathagata, once you really can't have enough of the spirit of the Tathagata, then I think you may not be chanting mantras, you may not be sitting for hours and hours, you may not be changing your outfit, but you are a follower of the Tathagata. So he's trying to help people learn how to integrate this sense of authentic presence in everything that we do, since most people are busy doing other stuff right now and are not sitting around meditating. Here are some other of my favorite pictures of him. You can imagine the kind of comments he got with the pink purse when that one went out.
Did you never forget that picture?
No, I never forgot it. In fact, I had to hunt all over the internet to find it again. I just found it. I couldn't find it. I found it last night by mistake, but everybody was commenting on whether the color pink was really the color of the season or not, and things like that. Anyway, here he's hugging, of course, a Western yogi who has now passed away, now deceased. With a doggy. If you actually see, if you ever see his YouTube videos, he's absolutely mesmerizing at every moment. His face is just constantly going into these different kinds of expressions that are caught in these photos. He's tickling somebody. He's also a filmmaker. He's made a number of films that you can watch. Travelers and Magicians, The Cup, which is about soccer, monk kids playing soccer. So yeah, he's a filmmaker also. Makes a film every few years. He loves India and just spent a bunch of time in India, but it's one of his favorite places. Very into India, Sanskrit. And this is a statue that belonged to his predecessor. I'm not sure if this one is a Terma or not. Later I'll show you a Tara statue that is a Terma. But this is at one of his monasteries in Spiti, which is in northern India. So people are always putting up these great quotes from him. Aspire to create connections with people, even those who catch no more than a glimpse of your brightly colored t-shirt in a crowd, that result in the seed of Dharma being sowed into their minds. That's something he said. So maybe a little bit of an explanation about the pink purses and all the different funny sunglasses he wears. And it's his way of connecting with people. Okay, so here he is with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And this is a really interesting point. For those of you that are somewhat familiar already with Tibetan Buddhism, there are different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. And for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is from the Gelugpa school. And the Tertan tradition is mostly Nyingma, which are the old school, kind of the yogic school. It was the first group of translators coming. So His Holiness said, as is said in an oral transmission by the great Lama Jamyang Khyentse Chokyi Lodro, that was one of the ones I showed you earlier, when the great Nyingmapa adept Longchen Rabjam gives a presentation of the ground path and fruit, he does so mainly from the perspective of the enlightened state of a Buddha, whereas the Sakyapa presentation, which is another school, is mainly from the perspective of the spiritual experience of a yogi on the path, and the Gelugpa, which is His Holiness's own school, presentation is mainly from the perspective of how phenomena appear to ordinary sentient beings. His statement appears to be worthy of considerable reflection, though through it many misunderstandings can be removed, because there are, misunderstandings among the different schools. So he's basically explaining that the Tertan lineage that is represented by the Khyentses and Longchenpa and the lineage that we're talking about here is actually coming from the perspective of the enlightened state of a Buddha. And that may be why it is the one that carries all the teachings about the Bardo states and the Tertons and going through the life, because that's the one thing that we can carry from one life to another. So just to know that that was a statement, I was very curious that, I mean, I wasn't surprised because I know how non-sectarian His Holiness is. So here's the Dalai Lama with Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche receiving teachings from him. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was one of the Dalai Lama's teachers, and His Holiness, you know, took teachings from many lamas, but Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was very special to the Dalai Lama in terms of learning the Dzogchen path and realization and all of that. So this is a book that Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche wrote about dying, and that is our main textbook, and as I said, my main inspiration for putting together this workshop now and also the course, because he's managing to take the profound wisdom of this tradition and put it into some terms that we can use in our daily lives. And this book is available as a free download. It also is being published in paperback form. It's going to be out at the end of March. I've already read it a few times as a PDF, but you can just go to his website, Siddhartha's Intent, and download the book and read it, and then you'll have kind of a good idea of what this tradition has to offer in terms of navigating the death state. So I'm switching lineages now a little bit. This is another Terton named Dujim Lingpa. He was born in 1835, and he was considered to be a very wrathful Terton and person. In fact, his students asked him, when you come back, could you please tone it down a little bit? And he did. I'll show you his next one was very, very peaceful, but this Dujim Lingpa was very, very wrathful. He had direct visionary encounters with numerous deities such as Vajravarahi, Avalokiteshvara, who's Chenrezig Bodhisattva of Compassion, Vajrapani, Manjushri, Drime Ozer, and he received teachings and empowerments directly from them. He also journeyed to the Pure Land of Guru Rinpoche, the copper-colored mountain, and received teachings there directly from Padmasambhava. When he was 25, he received what's called a prophetic guide from among the rocks in the Mara Valley. So this is something that happens with the Tertons. They actually get a guide. One of the first things they do is they get a guide that tells them which treasures they're supposed to reveal and how they're supposed to reveal them. He revealed 20 volumes of earth and mind treasures. He had 8 sons, and all of them were also reincarnations and became teachers. So it was a very powerful Terton, and to this day, many of his practices are some of the most popular and potent practices of the Nyingma tradition. So before he passed, I was mentioning he was kind of wrathful, fiery kind of person. He told his disciples to go to this hidden land, which had already been opened up, so you could actually kind of go there, of Pemako. And he said, I'm already there. So he sent them to Pemako, and when they got there, they found his reincarnation, who was a little boy of a few years old, and who said, oh, what took you so long? So one of his sons was one of Dujim Lingpa's sons had a consort who was a Terton as well. This son was actually a Terton himself, Drime Ozer, and his Sarakhandro was another Terton, a woman Terton. So Sarakhandro's story is similar to the other woman that we described, in that she was born into a wealthy political, in this case it wasn't a royal family, but it was a politically powerful family in Lhasa. Her father was descended from Mongolian royalty, and her mother was from a powerful Tibetan family. But from an early age, she was drawn toward religion. Instead of playing games with other children, she recited the six-syllable mantra Om Mani Padme Hum and encouraged other children to practice religion. Her first treasure, she revealed her first treasure when she was 7 years old. She pulled a ritual dagger partway out of a rock when she was 7 years old. And she had many visionary experiences with dakas and siddhas, traveling to many extraordinary Buddha fields. Now her father, as usual, wanted her to be educated in literary Chinese to follow his footsteps in terms of political power. But when she was 10, he arranged a marriage to a Chinese leader's son, and she didn't want to do it. She tried to commit suicide by drinking a mixture of opium and alcohol. And then her mother died, and at the age of 12, she had a vision of Vajravarahi, that same deity that I had mentioned earlier, that changed the course of her life. Vajravarahi empowered Sarakandro in the two treasures that would be her life's main teachings, the secret treasury of reality, Dakinis, and the Dakinis heart essence. So she did this escape from home. And again, she had been a very sheltered young girl. I think she was about 14, about this time, 12 or 14. And she basically, literally ran away from home and joined a roving band of yogis. But she, actually, the yogi who was the head one was the one who she became the consort of. She was, when she saw him, all her hair stood on end, and she kind of went into a state because she recognized some connection with him. So she just left home, but she had no skills. She had no nothing. And she had been brought up with servants and everything. And so and then she went to this place called Golok, which is just a very rough, it's like going from, like a New York City person, you know, going to go live in, I don't know, Idaho or Montana or something like that. And so she had to become a servant to other people and scrub pots and beg for food and things like that. And she nearly starved and froze to death on the way. There's sub-zero temperatures. She just wasn't really ready for this, so she suffered a whole lot. And of course, there was a lot of jealousy because he had a consort. And so anyway, that's how her story kind of went. She ended up marrying somebody else and having 2 children with this other person, another guy, and he disapproved of her calling as a treasure revealer and forbade her from writing or propagating religious teachings. And then and by the way, she was a vegetarian, which is just unimaginable in Golok and Tibet, where the diet is mostly milk and meat. Don't know how she did it. Her health worsened. She got terrible arthritis, but her devotion just kept getting stronger. And finally, her husband sent her to go live with Drime Ozer, the Lama who she became the consort of. And they were both treasure revealers. And then she had very small, I think 3 years, where it cured her illness to be with him. Then they had 3 years of supporting each other, revealing treasures together and all of that. And then he died. So she had a pretty hard life, but she had a really interesting life, and she revealed some really, really beautiful treasures. So as I mentioned before, when Dujam Lingpa passed away and said, "I'm already there in Pemako," this is the Lama who he became the next time around, Dujam Rinpoche. And he's the one who recognized his old disciples as a child and said, "What took you so long?" So he's more contemporary, and I didn't personally study with him, but I know a lot of people, a lot of the lamas I know did study with him personally. In fact, Tashi Choling, which is just up the hill from here on Mount Ashland, he was brought there by helicopter, and he blessed the area and said that people could achieve realization there. So he really put a very powerful blessing there and thought it was an important place. So these are the current incarnations. There are two of them, two main ones, Dujim Tenzin Yeshe Dorje Rinpoche. He was born in 1990. I haven't met him yet, but he's one of them. There were two that were recognized. The one that I know, and that's me taking refuge with him in Nepal a number of years ago, is Dujim Sangye Pema Shepa Rinpoche. And he started coming to the U.S. He's in his 20s. Well, actually, he's turning 30 this year, I guess, huh? He was born in 1990. So anyway, he comes to the U.S. He came 2 years ago. He's coming back this summer, and he's a very powerful, wonderful Lama. I don't know if he himself will be a treasure revealer. His two predecessors were. But I don't know yet if he's revealed any treasures. But you can see that these beings are able to, so-called die and then go through some kind of process and then choose another birth. And I don't know if you've seen any of the movies about this or heard the stories, but sometimes before they pass, they'll give indications and say, this is the village I'm going to be born in. This is the mother, name of the father, etc. Sometimes divinations are done. There are different ways that they're found, but they do it in a kind of conscious way. This is my own teacher, Bakatuku Rinpoche. He's the 10th of his lineage, and he personally was a student of the former Dujim Rinpoche. But he's also a very highly realized, I was told by Sangyum Kamala, the daughter of the treasure revealer that I showed earlier. She told me that my guru, Bakatuku Rinpoche, is considered to have the highest realization of any living Lama. She told me that a number of years ago. He's pretty quiet and doesn't talk much because it's not always about blah, blah, blah words. So I mentioned Pemako, which is one of the sacred hidden lands of Padmasambhava. Some have been opened and some have not. Pemako is an interesting one because some of it is in northern India in a province called Arunachal Pradesh. So it's actually a little easier to get there, not I would say easy, but easier than some places than going through China because of the political situation. So I went to Pemako twice with the Lama that I'm going to introduce you to in a minute. And when the first time I went, I had to walk 17 hours pretty much straight uphill, and it almost killed me actually, both the first and second time I did it. Now there's a road; it's actually gotten a lot easier, but I had to walk because there were only paths to the areas that I was going to. So one of the students of the previous Dujim Rinpoche was Togden Kunzang Longdrol, which means the realized one, excellent liberation in the expanse. A Togden is someone who's highly realized. And he is the one who Dujim Rinpoche sent to Pemako, when the whole thing happened with the Chinese. Let me find my information on him. Okay. So he was a great Dzogchen master from the Pogo region, which is also where my guru is from. And he practiced under a lot of different Dzogchen masters. And he basically opened up, he was sent by Dujim Rinpoche because of all of the political stuff in 1959 to lower Pemako to the southern part, which is now considered to be India. And he brought a lot of his disciples with him. And he settled on a certain village which has just amazing, what you call feng shui. I'll show you some pictures of how the mountains kind of all part and just bring the energy right to you there. So very, very powerful place to practice. So when he got to that land, this is it, he envisioned on the site, and this is also considered, by the way, this holy land is considered to be the body of Vajravarahi. and that's one of the reasons it's so holy. And this particular place is her secret place, which is the lowest chakra, the genitalia area. So, and there's actually a cave which leaks. It's a cave where Yeshe Sogyal did meditation, and it kind of leaks this red substance out of it, which is even you could consider it her menstrual blood or something like that. But anyway, it's considered to be a very sacred substance, and you can actually go to that cave and see this and gather this stuff that's leaking out. So anyway, his aspiration, he got there, and he had a vision that there would be a 3-story temple in the style of the copper-colored mountain, which is Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land, but he was not able to do it. So it's there now because, so that's the temple, because the teacher, the person who's actually the main teacher for the Death Doula program is his reincarnation. So I went a couple of times. I did a lot of fundraising for him, and I worked with him a lot to try to make this temple happen, because I was very inspired by all of this remarkable story. So that's the temple, and recently they even put up some place to stay that you can see to the right there. When I stayed there, I stayed in a little cabin where, I didn't put the picture here, but you could actually see the holes between the boards very well, and it was snowing. I mean, I was freezing. I don't know how I did it. I don't think I could do it now, besides the walk. I was freezing cold. There was no heat. I had a hot water bottle, and I would try to fill it up with hot water and try to stay warm that way, but wasn't too easy. But now it's gotten a lot easier to get there, more comfortable to stay, and the temple is built. So his reincarnation, and again, these aren't, now we're not talking about a Tertan, treasure revealer, but we're talking about a yogi who was able to, at the time of death, maintain this meditative state, and then was reborn in the family of some of his most devoted students right on that same piece of land. So that's who Tuku Orgyen is. He was born in 1973. And if you can imagine what it'd be like to be brought up by your students, you can kind of see it, because, they were kind of in awe of him. They have 2 other children, but they knew, he was identified. So at a young age, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the great Dzogchen yogi that I was telling you about before. He spent his early years in retreat in Pemako, in his birthplace, and he underwent vigorous training in multiple fields of study. At the age of 15, he went to Namdroling Monastery in India, which was the main monastery where the Nyingmas were sending people, now that Tibet was all shut down. He completed 9 years of study, obtaining the degree of Kempo, which is like getting a PhD. And he was also appointed as to a teaching position. He's a very good teacher. And so a very good scholar, very good teacher. And of course received lots of empowerments and transmissions from many lineage heads, etc. And he is the nephew of Bakatuku Rinpoche, my teacher, and mostly resides in Santa Barbara these days. So he's probably, if we all pray enough, going to come to Mount Shasta twice this year to give teachings for the Death Doula program. I already have a number of teachings from him. This is a picture of him with his mother and father, who, of course, were his students in former life. Very sweet people. This is him in Santa Barbara. This is the first time I went to Pemako, had everything to do with death, as a friend of mine had just kind of my way into Dharma had everything to do with death. A friend of mine had a very stressful and quick death from terrible brain cancer, and in any case, I took some of her remains with me to Pimlico, and that's him putting them in the sacred river. There's some rainbow lights as he was sitting there praying. This is the kind of bridge you see in Pimlico. Lots of rainbow lights and lots of rickety bridges. I said a lot of mantras. There was one really, 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 really long one that you had to go across a very big river in the beginning, where people were actually riding motorcycles over and things. It was very strange. I was like, oh, I was just prayed as I went across. And this is Tulku. He's lying. We do different kinds of pilgrimages, and there's a place that's considered what's a charnel ground, where bodies were left to be eaten by vultures and things like that. And so one way to contemplate death and impermanence is to lie down on your right side, which is, how the Buddha traditionally went into parinirvana or died. And so that's him in the charnel ground, lying on his right side. We all got to lie down there and think about death. Just more pictures of crossing difficult things. And here's practicing. This was the first time I was there in the smaller temple. When you go to a sacred place like this with such profound energy, my guru told me that 1 month of practice there is like a year practicing anywhere else. So kind of worth it. This is the view, the incredible view of the mountains. We were just taking a break, having some lunch or something. This is my teacher who made it up there, even though he can barely walk, but now you can actually drive. So a couple of years ago, that's him in the new temple, giving some empowerments or something. And this is Tulku when he was teaching the original Vitalism program back in 2014, I think it was. He came to Santa Cruz and he gave teachings on Bardo, Bodhisattva of Compassion, and we have all the teachings and they're all going to be part of the Death Doula program. So we're kind of going to get him in stereo. We'll get the teachings that he gave last time around in 2012 when I requested teachings for him. At that time it was for an astrology. It was a program where I was teaching astrology and plant alchemy along with these practices, and this time I'm just focusing on really the spiritual practices that can help people with death and the dying process. And by the way, I didn't know this when I was setting all this up, but I just found out that he's actually going to be in Santa Cruz giving teachings on Shitro, which is basically the Tibetan Book of the Dead, on March 20th through 22nd, and I will be going. But if anybody can or wants to go, it would be a wonderful thing. It's not part of the Death Doula program, but it's definitely worth doing if you can get down there. So this is really about a lineage. The reason I've taken all this time to show you all these pictures and explain all this is that there is a transmission involved that is beyond explanations and words and time and space and all of that. There's an actual transmission that comes through lineage. And so to receive that transmission, we need to kind of be aware of it and have some appreciation of it and understand a little bit about it. So that's why I took this time to explain what this is, because what really can bring us through are the blessings of this lineage, because there's like a mind, if you want to call it the Buddha mind, which is in all of us. It's in every little insect. It's in every living being. The beings that are most aware of their Buddha nature are these masters who have found a way to maintain that awareness of their Buddha nature, even in transition times such as death. So that's why, to me, I feel like I have something to learn from them, because I obviously have not been in control of my lives from lifetime to lifetime. I feel like in a lot of ways I wasted my first 50 years of my life. So obviously I didn't have great control over where I reincarnated. So this is a quote from Sarah Condro, the female treasure revealer, and that's a tanka of her. In general, although it is taught that there are 6 kinds of masters from whom you receive instruction, the master who gives the pith instructions are your root spiritual masters imbued with the threefold kindness. Thus, no discourse or tantra relates a story of attainment of enlightenment without that individual having relied upon a spiritual master. Each and every one of the highly accomplished masters who appeared in the past relied on material or non-material spiritual masters and developed all the qualities gained through the paths and stages of awakening. This is a matter of record. So that's what I feel is really the power of this lineage, is it's very well documented. And these are masters that have been reincarnating again and again since the 8th century. And there's a consistency there in terms of what they're teaching and the treasures they're revealing and all of that. The next slide. So, this is the Vajra Guru mantra, which brings the blessings of the lineage. It is said that the 12 syllables of the Vajra Guru mantra carry the entire blessing of the 12 types of teaching taught by the Buddha, which are the essence of his 84,000 dharmas. Therefore, to recite the Vajra Guru mantra once is the equivalent to the blessing of reciting or practicing the whole teaching of the Buddha. The wisdom mind of Padmasambhava is manifested in the form of the mantra. These 12 syllables are actually the emanation of his wisdom mind, and they are endowed with his entire blessing. The Vajraguru mantra is Padmasambhava in the form of sound. So when you invoke him with the recitation of the 12 syllables, the blessing and merit you obtain is tremendous. In these difficult times, it is appropriate to take refuge in the Vajraguru mantra. And that's Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, quote from him. So I think what we'll do is sing the Vajraguru mantra 9 times, then I'm going to ask you a question to think about, and then we'll take a 5-minute break. Do that. Om Ahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hom. 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 So the question I'd like to leave you with, as we can take a 5-minute break, if you can take it as a 5-minute meditation if you like, but if you need to use the restroom, is why do they reincarnate? Why are they doing all of this that we've been talking about? So we'll take a short. So I was asking why do they reincarnate? Does anybody want to say anything? Yes.
It's kind of like a diamond to just have this one energy of this one thing and all of these facets of the beauty and power of it.
That's lovely.
That radiates out, continues.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes? And then,
Just the feeling, their desire and their heart path is so in tune with the destiny of all.
yes,
That sacredness with
yes,
supporting their path, that they're called to come back again.
yes,
And complete their contracts.
right. And you're nodding your head.
Mine was going to be commitment, and what is it commitment to? It's the bodhisattva.
Right, exactly so. All right, so yes, why do they keep doing this? Why all of these things that I was talking about? It all comes down to the word bodhicitta, which Songsar Khyentse Rinpoche says compassion is a lousy translation of, because compassion has to do with sort of assuming you know what's best for others and more of a top-down type thing, whereas bodhicitta is really the word bodhicitta actually means the awakened mind, the mind of awakening. And so to be in a state of wisdom, of emptiness, of clarity, of freedom from clinging, it's kind of a whole different thing than what the Western word compassion sometimes encompasses. So, yes, the way of the bodhisattva, the vow of the bodhisattva, of course, is, to continue to reincarnate again and again and to never give up until everybody's released from samsara and every last insect, every last mosquito realizes their Buddha nature. So it's an absolutely huge concept. So I'm just going to read to you, this is from the book Living is Dying by Songsar Khyentse Rinpoche. He says, from a Buddhist point of view, the best way to prepare for death is to enter into the immense vision of bodhicitta and to think big. By doing so, the power of your practice will escalate exponentially. One of the main problems most of us have with our view of life and death is that we don't think big. Too many of us, even Buddhists, are small-minded and petty. By arousing and applying bodhicitta, our limited perception of the world and everything in it becomes far more expansive. Small-minded people only think about themselves, this life, and their immediate environment. On the few occasions they manage to think beyond themselves, it's rarely further than their own family. Only when death draws near do such people begin to realize how narrow and selfish their lives have been, how few of their achievements have any real or lasting value, and how many of the projects that took up so much of their time and energy were either entirely insignificant or failed to come to fruition. From this point of view, if there were just one life, death would really be a now or never situation. So is it any wonder that at death the small-minded are convinced that they are doomed to eternal failure?
Yeah.
What they lack is a long-term vision and purpose that ranges over many lifetimes. If they were to develop the determination to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment, however many lifetimes it takes, they would feel differently. So try to think beyond your immediate circle of family and friends. Develop a genuine concern for the welfare for all living beings, including strangers and especially your enemies. And bear in mind that in the context of the ultimate goal of a bodhisattva, taking care of the welfare of others is far more than merely making sure that everyone has enough to eat and a roof over their heads. Caring for others is to fervently wish and pray that every single sentient being attains enlightenment. By making this wish again and again, your view will gradually become more and more expansive. This is how you learn to think big. So this is how Rinpoche is advising us to use our minds to really, this is what's called aspirational bodhicitta. Is there something wrong? Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, I forgot to turn this back on. Aspirational bodhicitta, which is, they're just like the Eskimos have so many kinds of snow. You can spend years and years and years studying bodhicitta in Buddhism. And so, but the aspirational bodhicitta is where we need to start, which is this fervent wish that all beings become enlightened. So, now I'm going to talk about beings who aren't necessarily tertons, but are practitioners who have been able to achieve the state of tukdam at the time of their death. Tukdam, tuk means Buddha mind, and dam means one with, so it basically means one with the Buddha mind. So in other words, they're able to stay in a state of realization of their Buddha nature through the death process. And then, you know, of course, the Bardo teachings and all that are very famous, and that all comes from this same tradition of remaining in this meditative state during the first Bardo, which is the Bardo of dying, when the ground of being, when we're able to recognize the original ground. So this is the definition from Rigpa Wiki. A realized practitioner continues to abide by the recognition of the nature of mind at the moment of death and awakens into the luminosity when it manifests. He or she may remain in that state for a number of days. Some practitioners and masters die sitting upright in that state for a number of days. Some practitioners and masters die sitting upright in meditation posture, others in the posture of the sleeping lion, which we were looking at before. Besides their perfect poise, there will be other signs that show they are resting in the nature of the ground luminosity. There's still a certain color and glow to their face. The nose does not sink inward. The skin remains soft and flexible. The body does not become stiff. The eyes are said to keep a soft and compassionate glow, and there is warmth at the heart. Great care is taken that the master's body is not touched, and silence is maintained until he or she has arisen from the state of meditation. So, you know, one of this also just brings up the fact that if you're interested in being able to do this yourself, getting those advanced directives, 5 wishes, etc., to make sure that people are not wailing and fighting and upset at your side, that you have people there who are actually supporting your practice, and that your body isn't touched, particularly not on the lower parts of the body, because the physical touch can actually change where your consciousness leaves the body, and the higher, the ideal is to go up the crown chakra, which is also what the whole practice, if you've heard of POA before, of ejecting your consciousness or having a master eject your consciousness for you. They can actually do it for you, or you can have a practitioner do it for you. So, you know, there are all kinds of physical instructions that are important in terms of practical things that if you think that this is something important, are good, these things are good to figure out and think about and try to put them in place ahead of time. So I'm going to show you some pictures of people in Tukdam. The first, these are all pictures of Tibetans, but they're all fairly recent. This is a woman, and one thing that happens with certain kinds of meditative practices, it really depends on the kind of meditative practices that the person was doing, is the body shrinks down to a much smaller size. So you can see this was what she was like when she was alive, but when she was, after she had passed, her body shrank down to a very small size. This is very common in this lineage. Here is a Lama. You can see him when he was alive and then when he was in Tukdam, Lama Tabshir. And these, you know, I'm showing you these because it's actually considered kosher and appropriate in terms of inspiration, as long as everybody here, you know, is looking at this and feeling a kind of inspiration that this is actually can be. That's why these photos are allowed, is because we can look at that and say, wow, this person actually did that. Here's a famous Rinpoche. As it says, he's entered Tukdam, this photographic evidence of which is intended to bring benefit to all sentient beings. Official time of death was 3:24 a.m. on 30th March 2012. So great is Rinpoche's realization that practices performed in the presence of even this image will bring supreme benefit during this special period. So when the Lama is in Tukdam, it's considered a very, very, very powerful time to do practice, as maybe somebody here in the room has experienced herself, I don't know. But anyway, this is a very powerful time to really receive the blessings of the teacher. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily your own teacher, but if you have respect and you feel connected, you can still receive blessings during this very special time. Here's another one. You can see, again, this is a Lama who had shrunk down very small after and was still remaining in Tuktum. So it happens to Westerners too. That was kind of the cool thing. This is a woman who just passed away in Vermont a number of months ago. This was something written by her by a well-known Lama. She studied and practiced the Vajrayana Dharma for almost 60 years, and much of this time she spent in retreat. She possessed immense humility as a practitioner and was incredibly devoted, clear, and dedicated to the path of enlightenment. She was also a fierce advocate for social justice, the environment, and political democracy and equality for all. So, yeah, she stayed in Tuktum for about 2 days. A close friend of hers is someone I know, and I got some details about this. But basically, the Lama explained that since the center was close to where her family lives, the Lama had invited her to come live there, and she was really a cheerful, happy person. He says she was in good health and spirits. The next morning she came down to have breakfast with the community, then went back up to her room where suddenly she fell ill. She was taken to the hospital and passed early the next morning very peacefully with family and Sangha members surrounding her. As I believe she is someone to observe accomplishments in the practice with, we checked her heart chakra some hours after she passed and it remained very warm. She also had other signs of Tuktum, the mind resting in samadhi for a period of time after the body has died. We thus left her for as long as possible in a quiet room while the Sangha conducted practices with her body, then brought her back to the center with Sangha members doing practice around the clock. Her heart center continued to be very warm till early this morning. And then she had asked him to tell the lamas that she was connected with that she had passed. And so he told them and told them also that she was in Tuktum, and each one of them said, if Ani Lodro, that was her Tibetan name, wasn't in Tuktum, then who else could be expected to be in Tuktum? So they all fully expected that that would be it. Each of them responded with immense confidence in her and her status as an accomplished practitioner. So then he just kind of says it's amazing that she was born and grew up in Vermont and then passed away back in Vermont at a Dharma center. So she had a really auspicious passing. So that's one. So after I had seen this one mentioned on Facebook, actually, so I wrote to a person who's actually a woman, a Dutch woman, who's been a nun for a long time also, and I said, was this just a one-off thing of a Westerner being able to go into Tuktum? And she said, so she gave me a lot of examples. She said, well, these are just some of my good friends who this has happened with. So another old friend, an Italian long-term student of the 8th Kamtrul Rinpoche called Gina, passed away from lung cancer in the early 90s. She stayed in Tuktum a few days. While sitting up, according to her friends, a rainbow appeared at her cremation. Another friend, Mario Maglietti, an Italian student, passed away again from lung cancer. He stayed in Tuktum for a few days and a rainbow also appeared. And then more recently, another friend, a French monk, had done 3-year retreat 3 times, passed away in October 2010. He stayed in Tuktum for a week and the most amazing signs appeared. I remember that one of his gurus was so thrilled about all the signs that appeared during his Tuktum and cremation. So this is when we really make our gurus happy, is when we die, actually. Because then, that's when they really, I think, can feel proud of us, because we have showed that our meditation is strong enough for this. Another old friend in Holland passed away in 2006, stayed in Tuktum for a week. And the Lama was visited twice and was ecstatic about the signs of his enlightenment. So those were some other European people. So it does happen. Westerners can do this. It's not just Tibetans. It's not limited to Tibetans. So here's another phenomena about transcending death, which is the Delog. And a Delog is a person who dies and then comes back to tell the story. And in this case, this is actually a book that you can still get. It's easier to get as a Kindle, but it's a very beautiful book, and I'm going to be doing, oh, you've got the book, good. This is Chagdud Tukul Rinpoche's mother, who was considered to be an emanation of White Tara. And Rinpoche said, my mother was revered throughout Tibet for her extraordinary powers as a Lama, but she was more famous for being a Delog, one who has crossed the threshold of death and returned to tell about it. Hers was not a visionary or momentary near-death experience. For 5 full days she lay cold, breathless, and devoid of any vital signs, while her consciousness moved freely into other realms, often escorted by the wisdom goddess White Tara. She undertook her journey as a Delog according to the instructions she had received from Tara in visions, but against the wishes of her lamas, who pleaded with her not to take such a risk. So she did this deliberately because Tara told her she should do this, and the lamas were saying, no, 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 please don't do that. But she did it. It is remarkable that she, a young woman of 16, she did it when she was 16 years old, had so much confidence in her meditation that she prevailed over very wise, much older lamas. However, she herself had been recognized as an emanation of White Tara, a powerful force of enlightened mind for the longevity and liberation of all sentient beings. So this is a really, really incredible book, and I am going to read her description when we get to the Pure Land section of our workshop. I'm going to read her description of the Tara Pure Land that she experienced. So, cultivation of bodhicitta. As I mentioned, bodhicitta, maybe the word compassion in English is not the right word, but it is this vast aspiration and intention to bring all beings to enlightenment. Differentiated from idiot compassion, where we can sometimes just get into struggles with trying to help beings by having our own agendas, but maybe that's not really what they want, or maybe it's not really helping them. That's not really what the bodhicitta is. Bodhicitta is about letting go and kind of letting wisdom take the lead. So we're going to do some bodhicitta practices. The first one, I consider this Buddhist homeopathy. I'm a homeopath, by the way, among other things. That's kind of my main identity. So this is really kind of homeopathy on a spiritual level. So what we do with Tonglen means giving and receiving. So what we are receiving is all of the bad stuff from anybody who is suffering, and what we're giving is everything that they need. So we start with something easy, and it's on the breath. So we start with something easy, like we take a being that we really love and we care about, who's suffering right now. Whoever that being is comes to mind, and on the inhale, we take in all of their suffering, everything that's hard that's going on for them. And on the exhale, we offer them everything that they need. And on the inhale, taking in the suffering, and on the exhale, giving them what they need. And on the inhale, taking in their suffering. And on the exhale, giving them everything they need. Now we're going to expand it to some people that we feel neutral about, or somebody or a group of people we feel neutral about. And we're going to again take in all their suffering and And then on the exhale, we're giving them everything that they need. On the inhale, taking in the suffering. On the exhale, offering them everything they need. And on the inhale, taking in all of their suffering. And on the exhale, offering them everything they need. Now we're going to fast forward to the harder one. Take the person that you have the least sympathy for, whether you know them personally or whether they're a political figure, whoever it is. On the inhale, take in all of their suffering, all of their pain, all of their bad karma, all of their poison. And on the exhale, give them everything they need. And on the inhale, take it all in, all their bad stuff, every single bit of their bad stuff. And on the exhale, give them everything they need. And on the inhale, all of their bad stuff. And on the exhale, everything they need. And now you can continue on your own for just a moment. And on the inhale, just imagine the whole world taking on all of the suffering. And on the exhale, everything that all those beings need. And you can continue on your own for a few breaths. And you can also notice that you are able to, after doing this, just rest in wisdom awareness beyond self and other. Okay. So that is a practice which I really enjoy doing. I find it works for headaches. Like if I have a headache, I'll breathe in all the headaches of everybody in this world, and when I breathe out, I offer them all healing, and that's why I kind of call it the homeopathy of Buddhism, because I feel like you can take any situation, and especially a situation where you're having a difficult time with somebody or something, if you can just, a lot of what we experience is resistance, and this is really about being beyond resistance, because whatever it is, whatever that bad stuff is, just take it in and then offer back whatever it is that being needs. So that's one practice of bodhicitta. This is another one. This is a practice of aspirational bodhicitta. So we can actually say these together 3 times. as our practice. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that has no suffering. May all sentient beings live in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that has no suffering. May all sentient beings live in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that has no suffering. May all sentient beings live in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. And we can take the Bodhisattva vow. We can say this 3 times. Sentient beings are countless. I vow to deliver them all. Afflictions are endless. I vow to eradicate them all. Dharma means are immeasurable. I vow to learn them all. Buddha Bodhi is unsurpassed. I vow to attain it. Sentient beings are countless. I vow to deliver them all. Afflictions are endless. I vow to eradicate them all. Dharma means are immeasurable. I vow to learn them all. Buddha Bodhi is unsurpassed. I vow to attain it. Sentient beings are countless. I vow to deliver them all. Afflictions are endless. I vow to eradicate them all. Dharma means are immeasurable. I vow to learn them all. Buddha Bodhi is unsurpassed. I vow to attain it. This is also from Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche's book. He gives lots of versions of Bodhisattva vows. And here is an aspiration to kind of finish our Bodhisattva practice here. Always walking the Bodhisattva path, may the 3 kinds of hindrances and all afflictions be eliminated. May I gain wisdom and true understanding. May all hindrances caused by negative thoughts and actions be removed. May I always walk the Bodhisattva way, life after life. May the merit and virtue accrued from this work be dedicated for the liberation of all beings. So now we're kind of in the practice part of our workshop. So we did some Bodhisattva vows and practices. And now we're going to do some offering and purification practices. So the question is, why would we need to do those? We're going to do a water offering and a fire offering. There are many different kinds of offering practices. What's the point of an offering practice?
During our obscurations.
Move our obscurations. Yep.
Giving thanks.
Giving thanks, yeah. So, cleansing oneself, yeah. Because the understanding is that what is it that reincarnates? What comes with us? What comes with us from life to life? The Sanskrit term is the alaya. And this is where Buddhism gets really interesting. You know, Buddhism, and this is another point Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche has been making lately, and I've always believed this. Buddhism is more of a science than a religion because it's kind of technical. I mean, it's like a very profound form of psychology. Like if Freud was enlightened instead of sort of obsessed about sex, maybe he would have come up with this. I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't know, Freud, never mind. But what I'm...
been better.
Anyway, Buddhism is really a map and a study of the mind on the most profound level. And so the alaya is really none other than the ground of original purity, which is what we meditate on. However, because of our own dualistic nature, we don't recognize it as the ground, and it manifests as what's called the alaya, which I think Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche came up with a lot of the really good terminology that's used these days. So the basic ground is beyond all coming and going, but the alaya is what's called the storehouse of our habits. And a lot of these habits are unconscious habits that we've been carrying around for lifetime after lifetime. And we don't really know that they are their habits until they start causing us some pain. Like when we bump into somebody else's habit, or when a Vajrayana teacher manages to point it out to us in some pretty painful way. But until you say ouch and go, what was that? You don't even know that that was your habit because it's so subconscious. So he says, energies appear out of this basic ground, and those energies are the source of the development of relative situations, sparks of duality, intensity and sharpness, flashes of wisdom and knowledge. All sorts of things come out of the basic ground. So the basic ground is the source of confusion and also the source of liberation. That's the main message of this Kuntuzangpo prayer that we say a lot. There are different types of alaya, lower level or a storehouse consciousness, and a higher level, which is basic brilliantness. The lower alaya contains a lot of stories and habitual patterns. So, for those of you that meditate, you probably are aware of this because most of us are just constantly running stories in our mind, those stories that we tell ourselves that kind of reinforce our habits. But if you do start to meditate and get some spaciousness, you start to observe these things and say, oh, wow, I really have an impulse, around that. Right now I'm studying my habit of drinking black tea every morning because it's such a subconscious thing. And so I'm really watching, what is it? Is it my body? Is it just a mental habit? Is it a physical addiction that I have because I just don't feel like I can start meditating until I've had my cup of black tea in the morning? So, that's a small example, but we all have many, many habits. That's why we're here in samsara. And when we react out of our habits, we tend to get ourselves into trouble eventually because we bump into somebody else's habits and then we have a bad reaction and things. So purifying the alaya, or our karmic habitual tendencies, is a big reason that we do these kind of offering and purification practices. So it's the foundation or basis of all consciousness. It contains impressions of all of our past actions. These impressions, samkhara, form bija or seeds, and from these seeds our thoughts, opinions, desires, and attachments grow. These alaya vijnana forms the basis of our personalities as well. The seeds are also identified as the seeds of karma. Karma is created primarily by our intentions and are acting on our intentions with thought, word, and deed. The karma thus created is said to reside in our subconscious, or the storehouse consciousness, which is the alaya, until it ripens or until it is eliminated. Several schools of Buddhism offer a range of practices and approaches for eliminating harmful karma, such as performing meritorious acts or cultivating bodhicitta. This is a definition written by Barbara O'Brien in a book called Learn Religions. So anyway, I thought it was a pretty good definition, and I wanted to share that with you, that especially when we have a subconscious reaction to something, it's something that is coming out of our alaya. And we can see this very clearly. I'm also in Vedic astrology. You can see this in our astrology chart as to what our habitual patterns are as well. So it's a matter of habits, and Buddhist practices, whether it's sitting in meditation or chanting mantras, are other habits. So we're basically, what we're doing when we do these kind of practices is we're replacing some other habits with some other habits. Eventually, all of them need to be let go of in the ultimate state, because when we die, we're just going to be left with our mind. And the things that are really going to serve us are the simplest things, just as, a very simple mantra, or thinking of our teacher, or thinking of a pure land, that kind of thing. But these habits do have some use in that they can lead to purification. So habits and then distraction are the two, what we would call demons. If there were demons in Buddhism, they would be habits, unconscious habits, and distraction, not being present in the present moment. So we also, not a great shift. There's also this concept of lenchak, or karmic debt, which is that we have all been each other's mothers, fathers, lovers, enemies. We've had every possible relationship. The person who's your worst enemy now may have been your lover in your last lifetime. In the future lifetime, they may be your mother. It goes on and on and on. And so we have all these complicated relationships, and there are beings out of the body, especially in what we would call the hungry ghost realm, that really feel like they want something from us, like we did something bad to them, which we certainly did in one of our lifetimes. I mean, I can't even imagine all the beings I've done crappy things to. It's just sort of unfathomable. And so some of them are mad and want some revenge on us, and that's the understanding of how obstacles arise, is these karmic debts that we need to pay back. So practices where we make offerings to all of these beings and let them feel satisfied and let them feel happy and let them get exactly what they want, and even beyond that, become enlightened. That's what we would like to do to kind of repair the whole problem. So I mentioned about hungry ghosts as this is one of the 6 realms. I'm not going through all 6 realms today. There's just too much, but I want to talk about the hungry ghosts because we're going to do a practice specifically for hungry ghosts, because a lot of our problems come from this realm, because hungry ghosts are, and we can all be in a hungry ghost state. We probably go into one several times a day, where we feel graspy, grabby, needy, stingy. That feeling of grasping is really what the hungry ghost realm is about. So these, in Asia are often thought of as actual realms, which undoubtedly they are, but more importantly, they're all aspects of our own being. We experience all of them pretty much on a daily basis. So as I do this, I'm going to do some practices, and I'm not going to, put the words up, because I think it would be better that you just kind of imagine that you are doing them yourself, and just listen to the words, but imagine that you are making these offerings yourself, because that's how they can benefit you. You won't experience it if you're just sitting there watching Willa up there pour the water, but imagine that you are pouring the water. Imagine that you are saying these words and you are making these offerings. So the first thing we're going to offer is water. And I just wanted to review an interesting concept, which is the 8 qualities of pure water, which is what we're offering. We're offering the 8 qualities of pure water. This is actually water from the chai shop from the beautiful, pristine mountain here. Crystal clarity, coolness, sweetness, lightness, softness, soothing to the stomach, free of impurities, and clears the throat. So here's the water offering. This text that I'm reading from is actually in the book Living is Dying, and it's a terma from Chogyur Lingpa, one of the tertons, one of the treasure revealers that I was talking about. But this particular translation was done, I guess, by Hoodby Actually, I don't think it was done by Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche, but it's in his book, at the back of his book. So first, let's just chant the Mani mantra, because we're going to visualize ourselves as Shenrezig Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, and his mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. So we'll sing that a few times first. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 I and all beings equal to the sky take refuge in you, Avalokiteshvara, the protector who embodies all objects of refuge. Just as you formed the resolve towards enlightenment for the sake of liberating beings filling all of space, I will quickly attain Buddhahood. May all beings without exception be happy. May they be free from all pain, and thus never part from sublime joy. May they remain impartial and without bias. The milky stream of nectar flowing from the hand of Avalokiteshvara satisfies all hungry ghosts without exception. Om Ahri Hum, Om Ahri Hum. You can say this mantra with me if you want. Om Ahri Hum, 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 Om Ahri Hum. Imagining this, recite Om Ahri Hum and imagine that they attain happy existence in the higher realms. Om Jwala Madhyan Sarva Preta Pwa Swaha. Imagine that the pretas with restricted ingestion depart. These are the hungry ghosts, certain class of them. Discard that with water, cold fresh water. Okay. Imagine that all the hungry ghosts with outer and inner obscurations assemble. Contemplate compassion, emptiness, and recite this mantra. Nama Sarvatata Gata Valokite Om Sambara Sambara Hum. Nama Sarvatata Gata Valokite Om Sambara Sambara Hum. Nama Sarvatata Gata Valokite Sambara Sambara Hum. Nama Sarvatata Gata Valokite Om 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 Sambara Sambara Hum. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit of a more visualization and imagine this is a food offering. And we're going to imagine that this food is actually our body. So we're offering our bodies to the hungry ghosts as in the form of food. In the sky before me is Avalokiteshvara, the noble Vajragarbha, encircled by a host of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yidam deities, Dakinis, and Dharma protectors. Below him are evil forces, obstructors, the 6 classes of beings, and especially all guests of karmic debt. Om Ah Hum. Within emptiness, a vast jeweled vessel appears from the letter Drum, within which my body melts into light and becomes an ocean of tormas and nectar. Om Ah Hum, Om Ah Hum, Om Ah Hum. My mind in the form of Kasarpani, which is a form of Bodhisattva compassion, serves all guests with offerings and alms. So again, we're imagining this is our body. We're offering it to all of the beings to whom we owe debts. Nama Sarvatata Gata Valokite Om Sambara Sambara Hum. 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 Om, noble Vajragarbha, who vanquishes all misdeeds and obscurations, and the host of ocean-like hosts of venerable objects of refuge, accept this nectar torma of my body, grant your blessings, purify misdeeds and obscurations, bestow the accomplishments, and dispel all obstacles. Evil forces, obstructors, spirits, the 6 classes of beings, and especially all guests of karmic debt, enjoy this undefiled nectar and clear all karmic debts and obligations. May all your hostility, ill will, and viciousness be pacified, and may you be endowed with the awakened mind. At the end, no longer behold the guests for offering an alms, but rest in the continuity of emptiness. Through this, you will perfect the accumulations, cheat death, and in general purify misdeeds and obscurations, and in particular clear unwholesome obscurations and karmic debts. For this reason, exert yourself in this every day. This was the liberating offering and giving of the noble Vajragarbha. So, different kinds of offering practices. There are many. This is a water and body offering. But doing offering practices is a way to create a lot of spaciousness in your life and in your mind. So it's important doing some kind. We have many, many different varieties. I do a fire smoke offering every day as my main offering, but I also offer water on my shrines. And in the Death Doula program, we will go into how to do all these kinds of practices, and you can do the ones you're drawn to. So now we'll offer light. Songsar Khyentse Rinpoche just is doing a really fantastic project right now of lighting the Bodhi, which the Bodh Gaya, where Buddha achieved enlightenment. He's doing a huge lighting project there so that it's lit up at night and things like that. And on the website where he's doing this, he gave the 10 benefits for offering light. One becomes like a light of the world. One achieves clairvoyance of the pure eye as a human. One achieves the Deva's eye, or the eye of the deities. One receives the wisdom to discriminate virtue from non-virtue. One is able to eliminate the concept of inherent existence. One receives the illumination of wisdom. One is reborn as a human or a deva. One receives great enjoyment and wealth. One quickly becomes liberated. One quickly attains enlightenment. So offering light is a very profound practice, especially in the tradition of Dzogchen tradition, because light really represents wisdom. So I have a beautiful. Okay, we're going to have to. I have a beautiful prayer for offering light, but we're already on this new slide, so you can just, again, as we did before, just imagine that you are the one who are offering this light. So I want to add, though, when we offer light, the results are the realization of clear light wisdom phenomena in this life, the clarification of dualistic mind and the dispersal of confusion, and realization of clear light in the bardo, and the increase of wisdom in each lifetime until one has reached enlightenment. Traditionally, butter lamps are also offered as dedication to the dead in order to guide them through the bardo by wisdom light. We can pray as well that this light guide all beings of the six realms, removing their obscuration so that they may awaken to their true wisdom nature. With genuine faith and devotion, visualize that with your offerings, countless offering goddesses offer immeasurable light to all enlightened beings. So this candle that we light is only symbolic of immeasurable light. Just as a lamp dispels darkness, offering light from a butter lamp represents removing the darkness of ignorance in order to attain Buddha's luminous, clear wisdom. So here's a butter lamp offering prayer. I offer this brilliant, illuminating lamp of awareness, pure from the beginningless beginning, to the mandala deities of the Lama. Awareness pervades wherever motherly sentient beings exist. May they be liberated into emptiness awareness, the vast expanse of the Dharmakaya. These illuminating light offerings that dispel darkness in beautifully crafted, exquisite jeweled containers, filled perfectly with purely refined rich butter, with straight, smooth wicks made from the finest material ablaze, are offered to the Sovereign Lord Lama, triple gems, 3 roots, and assembled infinite oceans of sources of refuge. Though their wisdom eyes does not brighten or become obscured, the darkness of ignorance and the 2 obscurations are dispelled of myself and others, all sentient beings as vast as space. May we attain the eye of true, incisive knowledge. Namasawa tata gata sapariwara aloki ke aloki tatasa so. Like this. May all beings recognize their wisdom nature. So these days, just on a practical level, many people are using electric lamps or even those electric little candles and things like that for light offerings, as there have been shrines, houses, temples that have burned down by candles being left. So it doesn't have to be, it's nice to use an actual fire when you can, but you can also offer lamps. I use a lot of lamps myself, just it's safer. So now I'm going to talk about Pure Lands, because this is another kind of section of practice that that is helpful in terms of dying and rebirth. There are whole schools of Buddhism called Pure Land Buddhism, which are based on these Pure Lands. The famous Pure Land that many beings aspire to is Amitabha's Pure Land. Amitabha is an aspect of actually Guru Rinpoche. He comes in kind of three forms or three levels. The highest level is Amitabha, that's the Dharmakaya, or the unmanifest level. And then the next level, the Sambhogakaya, is Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And then finally manifesting as Guru Rinpoche. But Amitabha basically said that anybody who could just think of him could come to his Pure Land. That was his thing. So that's why Amitabha is so popular in terms of his Pure Land, because there's Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land of the Copper-Colored Mountain, there's Tara's Pure Land, which we're going to do a prayer for. But Amitabha is the one that is most popular in some ways. The name of his Pure Land is Sukhavati, and it appears in many of the prayers of aspiration that are in the sutras compiled by great Chinese, Japanese, and Tibetan Buddhist masters. So this goes beyond Vajrayana Buddhism. This is from Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche's book. Try to imagine Sukhavati in your mind's eye, lush gardens with fresh green lawns surrounded by majestic snow mountains, turquoise lakes full of blossoming lotuses, elegant white swans, magnificent palaces, delicate parasols, richly ornamented canopies, jewel-encrusted pavilions, brilliantly colored birds and animals of all kinds. Everything about Sukhavati has been designed to attract and enthrall you. In the midst of all this splendor stands Lord Amitabha's exquisite palace made of lapis lazuli, the finest jade, brilliant diamonds and turquoise, all garlanded with pearls. Picture every detail in your mind's eye. Lord Amitabha resides at the center of this palace, glorious, victorious, and magnificent. Boundless rays of light stream from his body as he exudes immeasurable, unconditional love and compassion for all beings. He's surrounded by bodhisattvas and offering gods and goddesses, all of whom exude love and compassion as they wait for you to join them. In front of Lord Amitabha is a lake full of blossoming lotus buds through which beings are reborn every second. Fervently wish to be reborn in this realm and yearn with all your heart to see the lotuses for yourself. So again, this is a kind of aspiration to go to a Pure Land. So I wanted to read you this incredible description written by the emanation of White Tara of the Pure Land that she visited when she did her 5 days out of her body and died. Basically, her body was dead for 5 days. And during that time, she visited several Pure Lands, but also visited some of the realms where beings were suffering a lot and being liberated by different mantras and things like that. So here's her description of Tara's Pure Land. I came to a place where the entire country was verdant wherever I looked, beautiful and vividly clear, a marvelous environment with many extraordinary features. Pavilions of 5-colored rainbow light hovered in the sky. Many kinds of flowers and lotuses grew everywhere. I'll change the slide. Oh yeah, this is the Tara that was pulled out by Chogyur Lingpa, one of the treasure revealers. So this statue was actually a revealed treasure. So I'll continue with this. Pavilions of 5-colored rainbow light hovered in the sky. Many kinds of flowers and lotuses grew everywhere. Here there was no concept of summer or winter. The wish-granting trees were in full leaf, and from the words of Buddha Dharma in the Sanskrit language, such as Namo Aryatare Mam. Birds that were emanations of the noble lady, sparrows, ducks, peacocks, cranes, parrots, grouse, cuckoos, and swans played everywhere. The land was filled with wealth and prosperity gems. Everywhere were pools of nectar endowed with 8 fine qualities and elegantly appointed bathhouses made of precious jewels. In this realm there were no concepts of birth, aging, illness, or death. All of the inhabitants were born miraculously from the hearts of lotuses. In no future lifetimes would they hear unpleasant or discordant sound. Those dwelling there were bodhisattvas who had attained high levels of realization. This place surpassed the limits of imagination. Its size could not be measured. It contained thousands of immeasurable mansions fashioned of the 5 precious substances. I arrived at the gateway of the central palace, a vast celestial mansion of magical and marvelous appearance, having the power to liberate beings in 4 ways. The very moment I entered it, I awoke from deep sleep of ordinary rational consciousness and was free of the veils of ignorance. The inner vision of my pristine awareness expanded, and I experienced a surge of love and compassion. I came to a courtyard in which many thousands of goddesses dressed in green chanted the praises to the 21 forms of Tara in the Sanskrit tongue. Occasionally they played small finger cymbals, golden hand drums, and drums made of sandalwood, ebony, serpent hearts wood, and 4 kinds of heartwood, as well as cymbals, gongs, and flutes. They frequently punctuated their chant with music performed on this inconceivable variety of instruments. Upon hearing them, I felt an unimaginable sense of devotion. I made offering praises with my mind. I proceeded to the immeasurable central palace, the celestial mansion. I saw that the 5 layered walls were made of conch shell, gold, coral, emerald, sapphire, all with friezes of ruby. The pillars and columns were made of red pearl. The main roof was beams of quartz crystal, and the rafters were made of gems to illuminate the interior. Atop a cornice of gold was a pediment of coral, supporting a bluish-green vault of turquoise. Melodious music from the chimes on the rooftop resounded, taking away the suffering of those in the lower realms. The fragrant scent of incense of the immeasurable attitudes wafted about. There were fine displays of unimaginably lovely offerings. In the center of the mansion, upon a many-colored lotus with 1,000 petals and a moon disk seat, was the only refuge, the very embodiment of compassion, the sublime mother of all the victorious ones of the 3 times, the sister of the bodhisattvas, she whom both those in the human world and those in the heavens worship with the crowns of their heads touched to the soles of her feet, the goddess who was born from the tears of the exalted one, the noble Tara herself. Her body was bluish-green, more intensely luminous than a mountain of turquoise fit by 1,000 suns. Infinite rays of light shone from her form, which was adorned with the major and minor marks of perfection. Her body was that of a youthful maiden of 16 years of age, clad in garments made from the silk of the gods, adorned with immeasurably valuable ornaments of precious, wish-fulfilling gems. Her hair was shiny jet black. Half of her tresses were bound up in a top knot, and with ribbons of blue-green silk that fluttered in the breeze. With her left hand in the gesture symbolizing the 3 jewels, she held the stem of a blue lotus, the petals of which bloomed next to her ear. With her right hand, she held the gesture of granting refuge. She, Tara, mother of all Buddhas, sheltered all beings from the limitless fears of this confused world of cyclic existence. She held her 2 legs half-crossed in the posture of a female bodhisattva. Many noble female bodhisattvas were circumambulating her, and there were also many varied manifestations of Tara herself. All were distinctly visible, but without the aggregates of flesh and blood. They appeared as illusory forms of pristine awareness, a magical display manifesting in myriad ways. I saw them all in their scintillating brilliance, like stars and planets reflected in a vast ocean. At that point, my grasping at ordinary reality spontaneously ceased, and I experienced for a time an unimaginable sense of cosmic order. So that was her vision, and now I'd like to read, and you can silently consider it your own prayer. This is by Sarah Condro, the Treasure Revealer, the female Treasure Revealer that I talked about earlier. This is her aspiration prayer. Aspiration to be reborn in the pure, land turquoise petals exquisitely arranged. So this is the aspiration prayer for the pure realm that we just heard described. Homage to the Guru, noble Tara. Appearing in and of itself is a magnificent realm of total purity, self-emergent, spontaneously present, and covered by a ground of gold. Cool ponds and healing waters with 8 special qualities flow everywhere. A great harvest of plants, flowers, and fruits is succulent and ripe. Flocks of birds and wild animals proclaim Dharma melodies, and the sweet fragrances of juniper and incense waft all around. Divine children of all types of heavenly beings continuously present offerings and sing praises. In the center of all this, amidst a landscape richly made of jewels, is a celestial mansion built from lapis lazuli, a self-emergent palace of delight, exquisite to behold. Transparent from outside and in, it has 4 doors, and in the corners, along with pediments, dharma wheels, banners, and canopies, its ornamentation and surrounding environment are totally perfect. There, in the center of the mansion, upon a stainless and vast seat of lotus and moon, is noble Tara, who manifests from the compassion of the Buddhas. Glorious in her swift bestowal of peace, she is green with a single face and 2 hands. Vivid, still, and at ease, she sits surrounded by Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, 21 of her own emanations, and countless dakinis, all continuously proclaiming the teachings of secret mantra and manifesting through the great compassion and love of her wisdom intent. From now, forever now more, we trust you, noble Mother, as our exalted wisdom deity. Devotedly, we beseech you with action, speech, and intention aligned together. Pray, enable us externally to uphold conduct befitting the vows of individual liberation and of bodhisattvas, and internally to hold conduct that accords with the profound Vajra vehicle, and thereby actualize in an unerring manner the 2 stages of the supreme path, so that we may vanquish quickly and completely the armies of the 4 Maras. No matter what comes, joy or sorrow, good or bad, please bestow the strength and power that will ripen and liberate my mind. Through simply remembering you, noble Tara, once I have entered the peerless path of this unsurpassed vehicle, may the sublime qualities of my practice experiences and realization develop positively, and through actualizing the grounds and paths unmistakably, may I, unmoving from within the luminosity of my own awareness, awaken as the primordially pure, ever excellent. Finally, may I and infinite sentient beings keep you, Sublime Lady, close within our hearts, and so be reborn in the peerless pure land of turquoise array, without having to go anywhere else in between. Once born there, may we perfectly fulfill the prophecies, and through the vast wisdom activity that subdues unruly beings, train each and every one appropriately. There as well, may we discover the strength to empty the 3 realms of cyclic existence from their depths. Finally, through the completely pure truth of the nature of reality and the undeceiving truth of relative cause and result, may there be no obstacles to offset the genuine purpose of this aspiration, and may each and every goal be swiftly realized. So that's an example of an aspiration prayer. There are many kinds of Pure Land aspiration prayers, but this one, of course, very beautiful. Pure heart and devotion, I think, comes through so strongly in her practices, and I'm so. Aspiration prayers are another practice and part of this path. So we talked about the Pure Land already. And now we can just, we've gone through some of the practices in terms of purification, aspiration, bodhisattva vows, and we can just take a moment to sit in meditation. We can often, in the Vajrayana tradition, we keep our eyes open and we can just let our bodies relax. And just look at your mind. And so we had our intention at the beginning, and then we had our practices in the middle, and then now to make the third of the three auspicious parts, we dedicate our speaking and listening and praying and practicing to the benefit of all beings. May all sentient beings benefit from us, from our gathering here today. May all be free of suffering and attain the state of enlightenment very, very quickly. Okay, so I'm ready to, I think there were some questions. I'm ready to take some questions. If you have some questions about the Death Doula program or anything that we talked about this Hawk.
Does Vajrayana chant the Om Loka?
The Bhuvava Swaha.
Om Loka Samata. Is that ever used?
I don't know. Not that I know of. No. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I don't see the person who had questions, so maybe she was gone.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the rest of the program?
Well, just that it's starting in March, and there's a practice requirement of an hour a day of these kinds of practices. It won't be specific that you have to do a specific one, but you'll be introduced to different ones, and you can do meditation or prayers or yes.
If you're doing the Death Doula ministry, and how do you apply that? The teachings and what you're learning in that, how do you apply that in the real world as far as people that you know that are passing, or is it mostly for just in general?
It just depends on what you want to do with it. You can do it just for yourself. You can do it because you'd like to help people who are in transition. It
So the
could be either.
practices would help you as an individual when you approach that.
Absolutely, that's the primary, because we have to be ready ourselves. And also, yeah, what did you want to say? Go ahead. I don't teach it, but we could invite someone to do it. We do have a lama who's going to be coming and to giving Bardo teachings and meditation instructions and things like that. He can teach Poa, and we could get him to do the Amitabha style Poa. So we could do that.
And then what's the interaction that you might be able to obtain with hospitals or?
Well, the reason we're offering ministerial credentials is so that if you do want to go into that kind of environment, you have some credentials to go. Sometimes that can help. So that's why we're offering ministerial credentials, because this is being done through a church, an interfaith church. Yeah.
Also, if you have an understanding of Tibetan Buddhist practices and philosophy and everything, but what about people who this is not something they're familiar with?
Yeah, well, as we develop bodhicitta, we're able to help people wherever they're at. Actually, you'll see in the book, he has a lot of really good suggestions of dealing with people who aren't spiritual or aren't into Buddhism. He's got some really great ideas, including, because what he says is, even if before they died, they might have been skeptical or not interested, but after they pass, they need help, and you can help them, and you can just go ahead and do it. You don't have to worry about anything, because your intention is to help them. So you can do a lot of these practices even after a person dies. And he has a lot of suggestions of dealing with people who are passing but not spiritual, just to help them feel calm. Sometimes say the Mani mantra just quietly, or he's got a lot of really good ideas. The Living is Dying. No, not that one. The Living is Dying. Yeah.
In response to her question, my father died. I had been studying with Sogyal Rinpoche at the time, and I took the things from his book and I Christianized it.
Right.
And I actually made a tape and sent it to him for the funeral. And there were like 300 people there. I don't know what everybody thought of it, but one person came up to my mother and said, "I don't know what this practice is, but my heart longed to go there."
Oh, wow.
A Midwesterner, Wisconsin Protestant.
Oh, wow. Their heart longed to go there. That's amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, yes.
I just wondered if you could say a little bit about the structure of these parts and some thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, there are a bunch of recordings that came from 2014, the whole set of Bardo teachings, a lot of teachings on compassion that Tulku did. Every month I'm either going to hold a meeting where I'm going to introduce stuff and then assign, give you practices, readings, recordings to listen to, and then I hope 2 of those 6 times Tulku will be here for a whole weekend. So sometimes it'll just be a Sunday afternoon meeting with me, and then I'll be telling you, you listen to this recording about Chenrezig, and you're going to read this, and you're going to do this. So it'll be kind of like school in that way, that you'll have things to listen to, things to practice. And then when Tulku's here, he'll be just giving like 2 days of practice. This is my aspiration and wish, and I hope you'll join me in praying for it, because he's in Pemmico right now. I can't reach him, but before he left, we've obviously had a close connection for a long time and done a lot of things together. I've gone to his retreat land twice, and he's come up and taught numerous times for me in Santa Cruz, even before the Vitalism program. So I do have confidence that, barring some kind of unusual circumstances, that he will follow through on what we talked about just as he was disappearing into Pamlico, where I said, I'm doing this death doula thing. I want to use your recordings. And by the way, could you also come to Mount Shasta? And he said, yes, bye. And that was, so then I have to wait a few months before I can actually find out, well, can we actually choose some dates and make this really happen? But, we've done it before, so I think we'll do it again. I'm just praying, but please pray with me that no obstacles will arise. He's really a great teacher, and he's really got the heart of the Dzogchen teaching. So it'll be good. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yes. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to keep doing this, and I also want to encourage everyone if they'd like to sign up for the ministry program for this death doula. It's something that's very needed in our world to help people cross over. So I know some of you already know, and Willa knows, I had a near-death experience, and I had died, and I had been on the other side, and I had a complete soul transfer. I want to call that a reincarnation in this body, and it's so crucial because it's a serious thing. When we leave this body and we go on the other side, the more help, that we're there to help people transition from the body to the other side, transition out of the body into it. So it's just, I highly recommend it that people sign up for this because it's needed. And thank you, Willa.
Thank you. So, thank you for mentioning that. And the other thing is, if we are able to serve others, by doing these purification practices, meditation, cultivating compassion, we are also accumulating merit so that our own death circumstances are likely to be better than, for example, that one that I shared of the woman in Vermont who had just had she was at a Dharma center, alive one minute, dead the next, and went into her meditative state. Everything went just beautifully. And so a lot of that is accumulated merit from having done these kind of practices and helping others through their transitions, as you were saying, if you're called to that. I mean, if you're not, that's also okay. Right. Thank you, everyone, and it was a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you for supporting the Chai Shop, too.